Welcome back to Stories We Weren't Supposed to Tell. This is a survivor-led space where we speak honestly about abuse, healing, and what it really takes to rebuild your life. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy or medical advice. Please take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and protect your mental health while listening. This episode contains discussions of sexual assault, domestic violence, coercive control, narcissistic abuse, trauma bonds, CPTSD, and other heavy survivor topics. Today is Sadie's Manipulation Whisper episode. If you heard Sadie's anonymous story, then you know there's a lot happening underneath the surface. If you haven't listened to Sadie's episode, go back now. We'll wait. So today, Krystle and I are breaking down the trauma responses, nervous system survival, and manipulation tactics that were operating behind the scenes. Because sometimes survivors judge themselves for the way they coped before they understand their body was doing everything it could to survive. This is Sadie's Manipulation Whisperer episode. Let's get into it. With Sadie's episode, I do want to go through a couple of the trauma responses because I feel like that's so important that people understand what her nervous system was doing. Because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be judging, but they don't understand the aspects of what she was going through and why her nervous system was behaving that way. I want to talk about is CPTSD, is complex PTSD. So it's trauma that's not just from one bad event, it's repeat chaos. You stop reacting to just one incident because you're just wired to expect pain. It's a nervous system that learns survival before it even learns safety. And long after the abuse ends, your body is acting like it's still happening. That's why survivors say, I know I'm safe, but I just don't feel safe. Because trauma doesn't just live in memory, it lives in your body. CPTSD is what happens when trauma stops being one moment and becomes the environment you lived in. Your nervous system gets trained to expect harm, abandonment, blame, or chaos. So even when the danger is gone, your body still reacts like it isn't. You're not just remembering trauma. You're physically living with a body that learns survival as a baseline. CPTSD is not weakness. It's the cost of having to stay alert in places you should have been safe. Sex for some women is used as a form of control in a trauma response. A few things I want to say at the jump of this episode are about hypersexuality after abuse. Because many women beat themselves up thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stop? Why am I doing this? This isn't random. It's a trauma response. And let's break this down so everyone can see this for what it really is. This isn't about desire. It's your nervous system chasing control after being used, ignored, rejected, or taught that sex was the only time they felt wanted. Their body starts reaching for sex just to feel powerful, to feel chosen, feel validation, and feel connected, or just to feel nothing in Sadie's case.
Most common reason is for women to feel like they have control over their body and who touches them.
Exactly.
They may choose to continue with their abuser because of the familiarity and the calm.
This is a really good example because a lot of women go through this, but in my book, I continued to sleep with him even after I knew we were done. Reflecting on it now, it wasn't even the fact that I even wanted to. It was the fact that he was familiar.
Yeah.
That it was still my nervous system. It was still my trauma bond because it was just that relief of everything's fine right now.
Do you feel like there was a little bit of that was the only thing you could control in the moment?
Absolutely. It's definitely control. And if I look back on any time that I had any form of because I never really was promiscuous. And I think that was another reason was he was familiar. And it was like, I'm not adding another body to my body count. I'm not,
Yeah.
And so I don't want to go out and look for somebody new. So this will just get me through until I do type of a thing.
Right. No surprises.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was a big thing. And it does calm your nervous system down. So I'm going to break down the trauma response in your body. So we're going to unpack this really quick. Well, it's not going to be quick. This is a big one. During abusive relationships, you often wire sex into safety and emotional relief. In healthy relationships, it's connection, you're bonding.
Right.
But when you're in an abusive relationship, that's when you're safe. That's when everything's fine. That's when you're happy. The trauma bond creates chemical confusion, pain, and then the sex is the reward, the relief after deprivation. This is intermittent reinforcement through the body, and the body is chasing the old sedative. Trauma creates helplessness, and this time I'm choosing. Sexual attention becomes a fast-acting nervous system anesthetic. Trauma survivors are chronically dysregulated. Sex cuts through that fast. Most times it's not even about the sex, it's about the withdrawal and the belief that if I stop supplying this, I become irrelevant. Sadie said this herself, my body isn't mine. Let's talk chemicals. You have your cortisol, and that's your fight and flight. Once they withdraw or you're fighting, your body reads this as danger, threat, or a loss. So it doesn't see the difference of like if somebody's pointing a gun at your head.
Right.
You can't categorize this as it's just a fight. Your nervous system immediately goes like, I'm in danger.
Which automatically then releases the adrenaline.
And then your adrenaline kicks in, and that's your like hyper stage. So you're like hyper vigilant. You're looking for everything. You're trying to figure out your next move. You're trying to make sure that you're safe. So this is where your body gets addicted because calm is boring. So this is why a lot of people go back to toxic relationships, because that whole I'm safe, everything's fine, hunky-dory, you don't think it's right because you're not fighting with somebody. Your nervous system isn't going through all of that. So you feel like this person's not for you. You don't feel those strong emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So that's my issue because
Safety's boring.
I have dated some guys and I'm like, this is pretty boring. Yeah, which I should have just stayed with those ones, but here we go. Then dopamine. This is the most dangerous one of them all. You get some sort of attention. You get a breadcrumb. You could get that text of like, hey, I'm coming over. Or I'm sorry. Hi, how's your morning going, honey? Whatever it may be. And now they've dropped that breadcrumb and you're like, oh, everything might just be okay. So you get that dopamine hit.
Today's going to be better.
Your brain goes, there it is. There's that relief. This is the same structure as addiction. So when I talk about the push-pull and just looking for the next high, this is what I mean. So
just staying in survival mode until you get that last little hit.
Yep. Then oxytocin comes. For women, it's the love chemical, and it gets released during any form of intimacy. And this is where you attach and bond. The problem is your nervous system doesn't know that that person doing this to you is toxic. Your body only knows the chemicals you release, and it becomes mind over body. And that's a fight that most of us lose. This is where you hear, I hate them, but I can't let them go. This is why victims leave the abuser and go running back to them. Then next you get the endorphins. And this is an opioid-like relief, numbing effect. I'm safe now. After sex especially, but crying, a reunion, or an absolute emotional breakdown, you feel this. So after distress, you get this, finally moment, I can relax. Everything is fine again. And for me, like a really good example is when I have, which they don't happen very often, but when I have like ugly cry sessions, like ugly cry, everything's hit the fan, and I finally just let myself feel it and I just cry it out. When I get done, my whole body is just so calm and I go to sleep.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I know exactly what that feels like in the moment because, like you said, after that good ugly cry and releasing all of it, there's always that last breath. And it's just a deep releasing breath.
Yep. So those are the chemicals that keep that bond going. So sex basically is like a neurochemical bomb. You go through these stages in an abusive relationship, and sex releases it all at once. Terror, reunion, chemical flood. And your body learns that sex equals medicine. Now, let's go even deeper. Let's talk about the withdrawal from that, because that is one that's I don't ever hear anybody talk about, is the withdrawal from this. Okay? And I think it's so important people understand this, because I've went through this, so this is how I understand it. When you finally stop sleeping with them, and there's just crickets. So, for example, we'll just talk about what's in my book. So I decide I'm not going to sleep with them anymore. There's no fighting. There's no texting. I've cut them off. I told them 30 days. 30 days, no contact, right?
Right.
And you think that would be a relief for you, but it's really not. At first it is because, of course, you're mad. There's something that happened. So you're kind of fighting that.
Right.
And so you're standing by your decision. You're all right. So a week goes by, maybe 2 weeks. And there's nothing. Crickets. You're not getting text messages. You're not fighting back and forth. You're not saying anything. So then you start missing them, but you're not really missing them. You're missing that chemical responses that are going in your body, right?
Yeah.
So even though you're wanting that hit, that good time, your body still wants to go through all of it. Your body still wants to hit the cortisol.
Yeah.
It still wants to go through all of that crap. And you start craving, and the cravings become more powerful than before because your body's going to overdrive. It's just like when you're trying to get rid of the tabs that are in your system, right? And you start going through all the withdrawals, your nervous system does it as well. You think you're just losing your mind. You're like, okay, I was so strong. I'm not as mad anymore. I want to do this and that, So you start thinking.
You're justifying why to let him back in.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Or her, him or her.
Him or her. So, and I just want to say that this is your body's trying to figure out how to regulate. And this is ugly, and this is lonely, and it hurts like hell, but it's so necessary. This is why your body is still waiting for the hit. Your body escalates almost to where you can't control the loop anymore. And this is why no contact feels unbearable at times. You're literally withdrawing. You start checking your phone. You start stalking social media. You start thinking about them. Oh, it wasn't so bad, this and that.
Right.
And it's really important that you do the work and you break free and you find hobbies and stuff that are healthy for you at this point. So instead of checking your phone or going to their socials, you got to really try to make sure that you're finding a healthy route for you on things that you want to do. Most people will make it through the first 30 days, but this is something that I don't think people understand. Most people let their abusers back after the 90-day point.
90 days.
Mm-hmm. So they usually go 90 days, no contact. They're feeling strong. They're feeling great. They're getting to the point where they're actually really starting to break those trauma bond holds. Now, I want to say people have trauma bond holds. Some people spend the rest of their life with trauma bond holds, depending on how much time they spent and how bad the manipulation was. But the reason for that is they start thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
It wasn't that bad. I was overreacting. Maybe this, maybe that. And you run back into them or you send a message to them just to check on them. There could be all kinds of different reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time after 90 days. And which is so crazy because you've pretty much done the hard part. Your body is no longer like really looking for that loop anymore because you've trained your body out of it. But it's just, let's see what they're up to. So.
Oh, I'm strong enough to not fall for anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you're right back into their cycle. But healing is not always perfect. There are bumps in the road, and it's okay to fall down. Just remember how hard it was for you to stand up. So that's the biggest thing is if you're going through this or you're going to go through this, just remember that each time, like how hard it was for you to start the 30 days.
Yeah.
And then keep it after that. And then you go the 60 days and then get to the 90 days or whatever it is. But you go back. So some things that worked for me. A lot of people say not to think about it, to push it outside of your mind, to focus on other things. And I did say you need to make your mind go to different things when you want to do that stuff. But I think the biggest point I'm trying to say on this one is that you need to let your mind think.
Yeah.
Because if you beat yourself up and say, I need to stop thinking about this, your mind will automatically obsess. So if you say, okay, I'm going to run with this thought for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to do something else.
Yeah, you have to unpack the situations.
Mm-hmm. So you can't just avoid it because then you're not taking accountability, right, in your brain. So you can't be doing that.
Yep.
Healing is just not one decision. It's repetition. It's on how often you can go into the opposite direction because you're going to be faced with that trauma bond consistently. But if you spend 5 minutes down this rabbit hole, but the next one, I'm going to make sure that I sit down on the floor and play with my kids. Mm-hmm. That's what I did a lot. Was like when I'd have my moments, I'd give myself the grace that I needed and I go through it. And then I would exercise, or I would watch a show I wanted to watch and just put everything on Do Not Disturb, put my phone clear far away from me. I did whatever I could, hiking, meditation, writing, shadow work, you name it, I did it to try to teach myself. And it took me a long time.
Well, and one thing that I was told is I was a responder. And when you're a responder, you're not plugged into what you need. So because my phone was constantly by me and it made a noise and I was looking at it, that's a responder, right? I will pick it up. I will stop whatever I'm doing that's making me happy in the moment and pick up and answer to whatever's at my hand. And when she told me that, it hit so hard because I'm like, you dang right. I am a responder, because how could I ever let somebody need me and not be able to know that they need me in that minute? And she said to me, would it make a difference if they needed you in that minute or in 10 minutes? And have you ever had to wait 10 minutes for somebody to call you back where it was life-threatening or ending? And I said, no. And she said, quit being a responder. And I tell you what, since then, I've not had my phone a fourth of the amount. Now, because I've, have had surgery, it's been a bit more, but I am not a responder anymore. People can go a day before sometimes I respond back to them. And that was just unheard of. And I will tell you, that was the start of a lot of healing for me.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring out, because I was the same way. A lot of it was having to detach from your phone, but your phone is a dopamine hit. And another thing too, a good reason to put your phone away, especially when you're going through this, is because every time you hear that ding, your body automatically gets that
spike.
Yes, immediately, because you're like, oh my gosh, is that them? Are they texting me? Do they want something? Do they need me? Or your phone rings and you're automatically going to that. So it's good if you put your phone away or put your phone on silent and spend some time with, without it. So that way you're training your system not to be waiting to hear that ding and hoping that it's them. So that's a big thing. As we all know, I didn't go to therapy, but the things that I used to help heal was breath work. And it's pretty simple. You're using your breathing to tell your nervous system that the danger has passed and it's kind of living in the present. So you can look up YouTube videos. They're all over if you want like a guided breath work. But the easiest way is just inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth for 6 seconds. And you just repeat that until you're calm. So it kind of brings you back into your body and calms down that nervous response.
Which, if you have any sort of anxiety in life, that is what you want to do.
It works well. Very well. Journaling. So right when you have triggers, or even at the end of the day, a summary on your emotional roller coaster, that helps you pinpoint what your biggest flares and spirals are and why. And you have the notes on your phone, so it makes it really easy to just go
right into your phone.
Right into your phone. And you can even do voice notes, because I've done voice notes before when I've been busy. Shadow work. So shadow work is the process of examining the parts of yourself you avoid, hide, deny, or judge. And they're usually based on your core belief and value systems taught in childhood by life happening to you. Instead of avoiding these rough spots in your character, you hit these head on. And it's not to shame yourself, but to figure out why you react and act the way you do. It's called shadow because these parts operate underneath your conscious awareness, but still influence your choices. So, Krystle, one of the examples that got me a few months ago, and I don't know if I messaged you or Jared about it, but when you list the people you love, why are you not one of them? And most importantly, why do you not put yourself first on that list?
I would never think to put me on a list.
Right?
Of people I love?
Yeah. So if you're going to write down...
That would never be a thought in my life.
But why not?
I mean, I love myself, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
We all know I'm a little conceited.
Right? But why not?
But I would never think to put myself on that list.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I feel like it's a given.
Is it though?
Maybe for...
Or is it because you feel like... Or is it because you feel like I love my children?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like your children should go before you?
Always.
Do you see how deep this question gets?
Yeah.
If we keep asking the whys, that's why shadow work is amazing.
Yeah.
I do one of those questions a day. This is what moved mountains for me. Anybody can message me, and I'm happy to send anyone questions. And I promise to start off easy at first.
Yeah, because that made me uncomfortable.
That's what shadow work does, and that's why it's so
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I'm back in elementary at the principal's office. I don't know.
Right? They get really into it. But I'll tell you what, I realized a lot of my responses in the way that I act, the way I do, is just from there. Now, somatic exercise are body-based practices to release trauma and stored emotion trapped in your body. So, as we've talked before, trauma isn't just stored in your thoughts, it's stored physically in your body. You can't think yourself out of a trauma loop. You have to do physical work as well. So, a lot of people do dancing, yoga, Pilates, and even screaming at the top of your lungs while holding yourself.
That brings back Schitt's Creek when he wants to do the scream therapy. I'm like, if we opened one of those now, I bet it'd be freaking kick-ass. And we could call it Schitt's Creek Scream Therapy.
Shit, when we open up our coffee shop,
right?
we'll
Just
have those
sessions.
Yeah, we'll have a session. Like, we're closed for the next half an hour. We're going to be in the back screaming. You're more than welcome to join us. You know?
Bring your own pillow.
Yeah, bring your own pillow and your favorite stuffy. An easy beginner exercise is if you're anxious or your chest is tight, you just stand up. You're going to shake your arms. You take deep breaths, unclench your jaw, remove your tongue from the top of your jaw. And I say this because a lot of times people relax, but they don't realize that part of that fight or flight is your tongue on top of your jaw. Mine is always there. Just so you know, always there.
I thought it was normal.
Nope, it's not normal. So you want to put your feet to the floor and you want to let your energy move. Sounds easy, but this is harder than it sounds, but yet so rewarding. All right, so now that diarrhea of the mouth is out, let's dig into Sadie's story and what weapons were used against her. Because her tactics weren't just black and white. And you got to think that there's not just one abuser.
Right. There was multiple
ones.
Sexual coercion. This is one of the biggest tactics in this story. Sex was not presented as mutual intimacy. It was something she had to give to keep peace.
Yeah, because she had said a couple times he pushed the sex, and if she didn't want it, that he would make her life a living hell, that he would be mean to her and to her children.
And to her kids. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that, even though it was physically hurting her, he treated it just like it was an inconvenience to him.
Well, and she even said at the beginning, he was understanding, but then all of a sudden it had changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just became a huge problem. And then he would just do it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Even when she would use their safe word. They had
No, she'd ask once.
Oh, that's right. So then she'd ask once, and he would still press forward.
Mm-hmm. And all the different ways she tried to get him off of her. I mean, she did toys, did porn, did whatever she could to try to keep him off of her, but it never worked. He always wanted to use her body, regardless. So.
Yeah. Sexual coercion does not always look like someone holding you down. Sometimes it looks like somebody making your life miserable. And saying yes feels like the safer option.
Absolutely. And another thing that really goes with that is the fawning is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a trauma response. We kind of talked about that a little bit before. But it's one of those, if I just give him what he wants, everything will be peaceful. And then that was another thing. She just tolerated the sex because of his mood. She allowed him to do things, which just made her feel like she was a piece of meat.
Right.
And she was not consenting for freedom. She was complying because she was in fear.
For the consequence.
Yep. And she was exhausted.
Yep. He acted like the sexual needs mattered more than her pain, body, or humanity, which is weaponized entitlement.
Yeah. And she had that mindset of, well, men need a release, and this is how I pay my rent.
Right. And also the mindset that if she didn't give in to what he wanted, then his mood was based on her.
Yep. She took responsibility and he had zero accountability. Another thing too was medical gaslighting, and he always minimized her pain. So even though she had PCOS, what'd she say, the autoimmune and real physical pain, he made it act like she was being dramatic and that it was just all in her head.
He became annoyed with her pain and then even would push past it. And that's when she started doubting herself. And she felt like she had to shut up and just deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And when somebody repeatedly ignores your pain, eventually you just, whatever, it is what it is, right? Maybe it is in my head. I mean, the You never know how deep inside somebody's mind has been messed with,
Right.
like with that, because a lot of people would be like, well, why didn't she just do this? Or why didn't she do that? Or why didn't she just say no? Why didn't she leave? But you don't realize the amount of psychological abuse or what somebody's been put through.
This leads us into escalation. And this matters because abuse rarely starts at the worst point. It starts small, then the line moves.
And that's something she really wanted to point out, because she did say that, is I want everybody to know that it's not dramatic. Like, it's not all of a sudden this big thing happens and you're in abuse. It's small, little, teeny, tiny things along the way.
Right.
And she wanted to make sure people understood that. So we started off small with the sex thing. Okay, I'm understanding. It's okay that you're hurt. We're going to go through this. We're going to figure it out. Fast forward.
Yeah.
This is all in your head.
Yeah.
You need to let me have my release.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, right? So it just got escalated.
Abuse does not always announce itself. It negotiates the boundary 1 inch at a time until the survivor looks back and realizes the line is miles behind her.
Just like chipping at that ice sculpture. You don't realize it until you see the sculpture and you're like, huh, that's what they were doing. Cool. And they're probably like, look at my beautiful work of art.
As they're chipping away.
Coercive control. So there's a lot of this all over her story with both abusers, and I just want to point that out. And he never had to threaten her directly. He trained her through the consequences. So if she did not give it up to him, he became a total douchebag. He wouldn't help her around the house. He was unpleasant to her and even her first child. And so if she wasn't going to give up her peace, so she gave up her body. Yeah. Coercive control is when someone makes the consequence of saying no so miserable that you become a survival strategy. So you figure out whatever you can do to keep their mood happy. Oh, this one's a good one.
Weaponized incompetence?
So, yeah, let's talk about how she had to do all the adult stuff while he got to just play his video games.
Yeah, she's holding down a job. He had, and on top of holding down the job, she's running around doing the grocery shopping, doing everything, and he just plays his games.
And she did all of his packets so he could graduate from high school.
Yep.
She got him the job at the correctional facility. Budgeting everything. And he'd be like, oh, that poor, world's tiniest violin. I don't know how to do it. And you're so much better than me. So, and abusers really love to do this.
Oh, yeah, because abusers are naturally attracted to fixers. And fixers want nothing more than to be needed. And so weaponizing incompetence is a huge hold for a fixer. Because if you need them, they will fix you.
Another thing, too, is because most people that fall into this sort of stuff, they just want to make sure that the other person is happy. They put the other person's happiness above their own. So when it gets to a point to like where I'm going to leave or not leave, they don't want to leave because this person relies on me so much. This person will be able to survive without me. This person will be able to function without me.
They can't even make rent payment. They don't even know who rent is paid to.
Yeah. Basically. And then that just goes right along with the parentification of the partner. She became his mother and manager rather than the equal partner.
She was expected to raise him, serve him, satisfy him, and still call that a marriage.
Exactly. And the worst part is she didn't even realize this was abuse. She thought this was normal. This is how every marriage was. This is what you do. The women just fight for the marriage.
Which is another thing to keep in mind as you're asking the question, why didn't she just leave? Well, she would, in her mind, that's normal.
And she was a failure. If this marriage didn't work out, she failed at life. That was her thought process. And let's just point out, too, he made himself look like he was such a great guy. So at work, social, everybody thought he was this great guy. So, I don't have my degree. Like, I'm not a therapist. I don't diagnose people.
Right.
But from what she describes, he's definitely covert. In my opinion, he's a covert narcissist.
Absolutely.
So, which that's a lot, as people think that they're so wonderful and great. And so when, they get a divorce, everybody's like, what the hell? They were the best couple ever. They were so happy. Oh, she's making a mistake.
Yep.
She's making a mistake when no, actually not. And then that's also, too. So when you're in it and you're with somebody who seems so great to the world, when you bring up anything that's happening in the house, whatever form of abuse it may be, nobody believes you.
Yeah.
Because covert narcissists are really great. Only the people that are close to them is going to know. And what I mean close is going to be like spouse, children, parents, brothers, sisters.
Right.
The outside world is going to think they're going to hold them on this pedestal. You see that a lot.
A lot.
So if you think
but you see how fast it falls apart too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've said it before.
That act can only stay for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you want to know who the abuser was? Just look who jumps out of the relationship and is with somebody else, and look at the one who glows up and spends their time single. And right there.
Yep.
Let's see.
That is true for both of them. Both my besties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's true everywhere. I'm like, sit there and thinking back, and there's not one time where I've known that was not the outcome.
Yeah.
Abusers cannot be alone. A lot of times that other person is already there before the other relationship ended. He also cared about his looks, so he had to make sure that everything looked good. So that just goes with the public charm.
Okay, so even without locking her away from family and friends, he overloaded her. She carried the house, she carried the bills, she carried the appointments, the emotional labor, she carried the sexual pressure, and she carried her children. And she had no space to even understand what was happening. And that's isolation through responsibility.
Yes, and I just want to point this out because this is my observation, okay? You can agree or disagree, doesn't matter. But men do this, right? The abusers do this. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to say men, but I'm sure there's women that do this, but I see more men. The marriage goes south, they're pregnant, whatever may happen, okay? And part of their reason when they leave and leaving all the responsibility of taking that child on for you, for the mother especially, is now they don't have time to date. Now they don't have time to talk to anybody. Now I still have control and I can still do what I want and I can still mess around with them for as long as I want because they are so focused on raising that child and paying the bills and doing everything. I'm not even going to pay them any child support either. I'm going to make them really struggle, and then I'm going to show up out of nowhere and do this and that. And that's part of the reason they do it, is because if they can keep you so busy with everything else, you don't have time to look anywhere else.
Yep.
So
they're literally getting their cake and eating it too.
I will die on that hill on that.
Yeah.
I will die on that hill for sure, because that if they want to be able to have their cake and eat it everywhere.
Yeah.
And not be locked into one person.
Yeah.
Which you see this a lot.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why is they give that burden of, here's a child, raise it, take care of it. I'm going to go do my thing.
Sometimes isolation is not you can't leave the house. Sometimes it's I'll bury you under so much responsibility you won't have the energy to leave.
100%. 100%. And also, I want to point out, she was isolated. She didn't have any family there.
Yeah.
The only friends she had was their inner circle of friends, right?
Right.
So she didn't have anybody.
Nobody that didn't have something to do with him.
Mm-hmm. Basically. And, there's other things that we're not really going to get into because this is already so long, but like that her husband used, because he definitely was gaslighting, blame shifting, all those normal tactics. He was definitely using DARVO on her and things like that. But this episode was so long, I wasn't going to do the little mini, teeny tiny ones, right? Okay, so quick clarification before we get into Justin. Sadie did tell her husband the day after it happened this was not some secret affair she hid for months. She told him right away, and even after that, he refused to leave the marriage, refused to separate cleanly, and later still used it against her like she had cheated. This matters because he wanted the victim role while she was refusing to stay with him, while he was refusing to let her go. Now let's talk about Justin. the guy at work. Now, this man, this man was just a predator.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
And, she already said that she knew he was a womanizer. She knew he got around. She knew this and that, but she felt like she was safe because they were friends. The husband, her, and him were all friends. They were in that circle together, so she wasn't worried about it.
She had that false sense of security.
But I'll tell you, a toxic person can spot another toxic person, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I guarantee if he was, we don't guarantee it because you never know for sure. I bet he knew that her husband was treating her poorly.
Yeah.
And that she wasn't happy.
Yes.
So now he's just sitting there, waiting in the shadows to jump out and be like, Hi,
I can fix this.
Here's a flower. Here's some sunshine.
Yep.
So opportunist. He targeted her vulnerability.
Well, and he also even knew, like, the vulnerability even went into when she texted him, knowing that she wasn't leaving the bar because she was too drunk. She was waiting to sober up. And he went there.
Yep. Predators often show up disguised as a rescue.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here I come to save the day.
Man in the shiny armor.
And even before that assault happened, that night where she called him and she was drunk, there was all the different small boundary crossings. So he was testing her.
Yes.
He was testing her from the get-go. So texting her.
Yep. Started with texting her. And then inserting himself into the hike.
Yep.
That was a big one.
He actually positioned himself as, I'm just a friend. I'm harmless. Right?
Yep. And I think he used the husband triangle, friendship.
Oh, definitely.
As a security as well.
Definitely.
To let her feel like it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And that happens a lot more than you think. Boundary testing often starts as, I'm just being friendly. So the victim feels dramatic for noticing any discomfort, right? So they see the red flag, they feel the feelings, but they're like, well, we're just friends.
Could be innocent.
Yeah, it's just innocent. This is not really happening until it does. Hi, here's a picture of my penis. Want to be friends? You want to be better friends? Here's a picture of my penis.
Almighty.
Gross. That's like the worst thing ever. I'm like, I'm done now. We're not talking ever again.
Exploiting intoxication or impaired memory.
Yes.
This is kind of a center point of that because she was drunk. She woke up with bruises and body pain. And she later framed the event like she participated knowingly. And he relied on her confusion.
Absolutely. So she called and was confused, or she texted him, was confused, and he's like, don't tell me you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you're acting like I raped you.
Yep.
So he immediately, instead of being concerned and saying, oh my gosh, are you okay? You were that drunk. Like, I'm so sorry.
Right.
He immediately went to the defense and was planting those little seeds in her mind. When someone uses your blackout, your confusion, or your missing memory to write the story for you, that is not consent. That is exploitation. All right, DARVO, my favorite thing. Let's get a DARVO example out of there. So DARVO stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So let's get one of those for the Justin situation. So can you think of anything?
Well, clearly right when she texted him. You're acting like I raped you. That was the beginning of it.
He acted like she knew what happened, so don't act like you don't know.
Right.
Then he attacked her, so he tried to make her confusion sound ridiculous. Stop joking.
Yes.
And then he said, so this is reverse victim offender. He said, you make it sound like I raped you or something. So this is classic DARVO.
Yeah.
He took her fear and her confusion and made himself the accused victim of her implication.
Turned himself into a victim.
Exactly. Boom, boom, boom.
The moment she questioned what happened, he did not move toward concern. He moved toward defense. That tells you everything.
And then not only that, he tried to become the narrator of her missing memory. Right? So she doesn't remember anything.
Right.
So insert the confusion even more now.
Right, because he can paint his own picture.
So, I didn't really go into what happened because she did get her memory back. I just want to point that out. But I didn't want to go into piece to piece to piece about what happened.
Yeah.
But I am going to speak about a little bit of it right now. Okay. When she started to get her memory back and she realized what had happened, and she was like, holy shit. Okay. Because she would get bits and pieces as they were sleeping together. And that's another reason why I think she kept sleeping with them, is she was getting these little downloads and she was remembering after of things that had happened.
Yeah.
He claims that he got to the bar, they had a couple drinks, and then they got into his car and they drove to the park, and she willingly told him to take her boots off first because her boots were hurting her. She had those high heel but high above your knee boots. And so he took those off, and she said that he got really aggressive at that point and was like starting to rip her clothes off. But he claims it was the other way around. And then he claimed, he told her, well, you're the one that jumped up on me. You're the one that initiated everything. You're the one that wanted everything. And when she got her memory back, that was not what had actually happened. She remembered, the first thing she remembered was standing outside of the car naked and wondering why she was naked and why she was cold.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was her, like, the first memory that had come back. And then, of course, she kept getting more and more and more. And she said even to this day, she'll get another glimpse of something that she remembered. Another thing she said was she ran into, there was a group of girls that were at that bar that night with her when she made all of the text message. Those girls had said that he came in that bar and was pretty aggressive of, we're leaving, instead of just hanging out there. And so they confirmed the story too. They also helped with the whole investigation at the prison. Was those girls. So, but yeah, I didn't want to get into that whole, because it's pretty graphic. He definitely filled her blackout with a version of events that protected him instead of what really happened.
Evidence destruction disguised as protection as well.
After everything had happened, what he had done is he had handed her phone as he dropped her off the house, and he said, I've deleted everything, so that way you're safe. You don't have to worry about everything. Now, I don't think that was in the story either.
Oh, And when someone destroys evidence and calls it protection, they're not protecting you. They are protecting themselves.
Exactly.
So he immediately created, we have to hide this dynamic, which is grooming through secrecy.
Yeah.
He didn't want his fiancée to know. He didn't want people in town to talk. He took her somewhere very isolated and deleted any kind of record. And he made it feel like a shared secret between the two of them.
Yeah, secrecy is where predators hide the parts of the story that would expose them. So, and then they've mixed you in and made you feel responsible, and you're also confused, and so you don't know what to do. So you're definitely going to try to hide that secret because you're worried about the things that are going to happen to you as well.
Right.
You know, so
yeah, and then the secret, by the time you realize that what's going on, it's been a secret, and now you even feel like, well, it's been this long.
Yeah.
People doubt me because I waited too long.
Exactly. After she had texted him, and then he called and gave her all that baloney. Or then he said, well, I don't want to talk about it on the phone. You need to come over to my house and talk.
Right.
And of course, people are like, oh, why did she go? Well, she was missing her whole night.
Yeah.
And she's beat up. She don't know what happened. And then not only that, she still has that adrenaline pumping through her body. She's still in this fight or flight. I don't know what's going on. She's not making the most sound decisions at this point.
Right.
You know?
She's just been attacked, and she's trying to piece it together.
So, and then he didn't even want to talk. Remember, he put his hand on her butt and basically just did what he wanted, and she let him.
He called it a conversation, but he created an unsafe condition again.
100%. Okay, so now let's go back to the ex-husband after the assault. Okay, so let's go back to that.
Okay.
So this is where I put in some of those other things. He blamed her for Justin's actions. Okay, so you should have known better.
Right.
I told you he was bad. You didn't listen. He treated like that assault happened because of her disobedience to him. This is victim blaming.
Yeah, he made it her fault immediately.
Yeah. And even though the steps that led up to it, no matter what happened was not her fault.
Correct.
So she did make some not too good decisions.
Right.
right? But at the same time, she didn't want to sleep with him.
No.
She told him no. She wanted to be friends. He had weaseled himself into that situation. And so that's a big thing that I need to point out, because he was making himself the victim in her situation where she actually was the victim. It was all about his ego instead of her trauma.
Always. Gotta stroke that ego.
And here's the part that makes it even worse. He knew. She told him the day after it happened. He knew this was trauma. He knew she was confused. He knew something had happened to her. But later, when it benefited his ego, he rewrote it as cheating. This is not accountability. This is not heartbreak. This is control. Because if it was truly cheating to him, he would have left. But he didn't. He stayed. He refused to leave. He refused to divorce cleanly. He kept her emotionally trapped, then used the very thing he stayed through as a weapon against her later.
One of the cruelest tactics is reframing assault as cheating.
Mm-hmm.
He said it like she had cheated.
Yes, when they were fighting, and he had told her that I'm never going to get over that you're a slut and you cheated on me, and that's when she knew that was the end of her marriage, that there was no coming back from that. But there's a lot of women that would fall into that trap easily.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy that was where the light switch flipped in her head, because every person who's in an abusive situation has the moment when it finally switches. Yeah. And so that was hers.
Yeah. Because he literally took the worst thing that happened to her and turned it into something she did to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That hits the chest.
It definitely does. And not only that, he forced her. She wasn't ready. He forced her to go report this at work, right?
Immediately.
Mm-hmm. Retaliation control for both of them. So he was retaliating on both of them.
Yeah.
So she did not want to do it, but the consequences at home were way worse.
Right. Her trauma was still being controlled by everybody else.
Yep, definitely. And he acted like he understood once again, and would finally get some help. So he just kind of acted like, hey, we're going to get through this. I'm here for you, as well as I promise to change. I promise to be the better man.
Right.
And so he was future faking and promising her to repair stuff that he wasn't even going to try to do. And she was hoping that this separation would wake him up and make him better. So if you remember right, they were in the same house, but they were separated. He just returned to old patterns.
And it didn't take long. Future
faking sounds like healing, but it's really just another way to keep the victim invested in potential instead of reality. So love to future fake.
Future faking. We call that one the hook.
The hook. Here, fishy, fishy.
He also refused the separation.
Yep.
And the divorce.
Yeah, he did.
He refused to move out. He refused to get divorced.
They even bought a house during the separation.
Right.
So he kept just pulling her back in, like, maybe we can fix this.
And he would not love her correctly, but he also would not release her either.
100%. So if I'm going to refuse and I'm going to blame shift and I'm going to go ahead and future fake, all the things, the relationship problems, her fault. The assault, her fault.
Yeah.
His inability to leave and move on, her fault.
Her fault. Yeah.
Yeah. Blame shifting kept him from ever having to meet himself honestly. And along with the blame shifting, he used her desire and her wanting to keep the family together. Her emotions she already had towards something that she wanted so deep. He tried to use that through guilt. So he would also point out that she was the failure and she was the reason the marriage was ending.
Oh, yeah. The emotional manipulation.
And so she even, to try to get through this, and this just shows you how much he was manipulating her, how much he was gaslighting her. She actually took a big old piece of paper.
Yeah.
Poster board or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was. She wrote down everything positive about their marriage to convince him. But then she said, I think I also was trying to convince myself of why we should stay together.
Yeah.
And then he promised to change when she was vulnerable. So while she was pregnant with the second baby, he promised to change.
Right.
while all this abuse happened with Justin and she was trying to get through this, the same thing. He was promising change.
Yep.
But he never did.
Never did.
He just continued to guilt her for everything.
Yeah. And he didn't have to chain her to the marriage because her guilt did that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
The system that was supposed to protect her exposed her.
Yep.
She wrote a confidential incident report. People found out anyways. The small town workplace gossip spread. And she became labeled instead of protected.
Yeah, so she became the whore, the
homewrecker.
That's the word I was looking for. Everything. So this was all supposed to be confidential, but it spread like wildfire in this little town.
Yeah.
And this wasn't in Utah. And I also think that her husband also realized that this was going to come out. Because let me tell you one thing about covert narcissists.
Yeah.
Okay. They want to look like they were perfect. And the whole reason that marriage crumbled was not their fault. It was because of what she did. So he knew that they're not going to work out. Right. He knew he's not going to change. She's seeing through me. All this shit's happened that I can't get over, right?
Right.
So boom, 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 boom. How am I going to make sure I look good?
Yeah.
Oh, you go report this.
Yep.
Right? So now, he's got his retaliation on Justin and her. I honestly think that was his way of getting out clean.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
He saw an opportunity and he took it.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of times, those covert narcissists will do that. Let me tell you. Is there anything in her story that you think we didn't talk about? With Sadie, and I can't stress this enough, was the hypersexuality is a trauma response.
Yes. And like you said, it's almost like she was piecing together her puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as soon as she found out she could get pieces, it was almost like an addiction to get the answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, poor thing. I mean, even when she was young, 9 years old, her sister was raped, killed. Of course, she knows all about it. She knows all the details. She still remembers things.
Yeah.
And she still sees things that she should have never known.
Right.
Then she was molested, too, at a young age. And so she had those ones, but she doesn't remember all of that completely. So basically, from a young child, no, we'll just go with 9. I don't know when or what time the sexual abuse happened to her when she was younger.
Right.
But from 9 years old, you're already seeing this sexual nature, right?
Yeah.
And if you're little and you don't understand, like, oh, well, what if if my sister would have just listened?
Right.
Yeah,
because you hear adult conversations as well.
Yeah.
And that's where you get a lot of your what ifs. And then the little ones hear those conversations, whether you mean to or not.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to process the answers, but now they've got the questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you've also done that core belief or your value system or your moral system and what you're hearing everybody talk about. And you put that, you store it subconsciously in your mind.
Right.
And then when that shows back up, you're going to go back to that. Well, maybe if she just would have listened, maybe, oh, my body doesn't belong to myself. My body belongs to these men because I got to make sure I keep these men happy in case something goes sideways.
Yes.
So you have that aspect too.
Yep.
Which, yeah. But I think we've hit everything we're supposed to hit on this episode. Sadie's story is proof that trauma does not end when the abuse ends. Sometimes the body keeps reliving what the mind is desperate to escape. Sometimes the shame shows up in the coping. Sometimes the healing shows up in places that do not look pretty at first. But eventually, survival stops being the only language your body knows. And that is where everything starts to change. Sadie got there, not quietly, not perfectly, but she got there. And that's what I want you to take from the story. Thank you, Sadie, for trusting us with your story, and I'm honored to share it with the world. And to everyone listening, please know you are not crazy, you are not being dramatic, and you are not alone. You can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673 or the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 if you feel like any of this resonates in your life. Please rate, review, share, and help us get these stories to people who need them. And remember, the book that started it all, Dance with the Devil by Sunshine Faye, is available now on Amazon. If you have a story you would like to tell, please email us at sunshinefaymedia@gmail.com. That is sunshine_FAYEMEDIA@gmail.com. You don't have to be healed, you just have to be honest. On the next episode, Taya shares the nightmare she survived for years. And let me tell you, my jaw was on the floor the whole time. Thanks for listening. Please take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you soon.